The Bryan Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. We want to welcome everyone who's here today. Thanks for being here. Citizens may make comments about topics relevant to district business. Topics should be limited to 3 minutes. Comments concerning specific students or personnel will be heard in closed session. Do we have any comments? No. There being none, we're going to ask that you turn off all of your electronic devices, including me. And we will now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. First, we're going to hear the American Pledge by Branch Elementary and the Brazos Valley Regional Day School for the Deaf, followed by the Texas Pledge by Navarro Elementary. And these are recorded since we are no longer in school.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We appreciate them recording those before school was out of session. So, all right. We will now move into our spotlight. So first, we have recognition of the Hispanic Forum of Bryan College Station donation for Rudder High School mariachi uniforms. So this will be presented by Dr. Alma Velez and Irma Pineda.
Good evening, everybody. I feel like I just saw some of you not that long ago. We have slept and hopefully rested a little bit. Thank you. Thank you for supporting us. As mentioned, I'm Dr. Alma Velez. I kind of hold two positions here. I do work for the district as principal of Jones Elementary, but I'm also a member of the Hispanic Forum. And so part of our mission as the Hispanic Forum is to promote our cultural awareness in our community. And we definitely try to partner with Bryan ISD just because we feel that that's, if not the biggest promoter of that cultural awareness. And Bryan ISD's obviously done a great job with that in regard to the different programs that we've already begun to implement, such as bilingual education, dual language education, and then the starting of the Mariachi Los Vikingos at Bryan High. And we know that when we promote that awareness, it could lead to that acceptance of various cultures, which, ties into tolerance with Essential 8. And so with that being said, we know that with that cultural appreciation, also students would have that cultural pride and want to be more involved in schools and be present in school daily. And so when we were approached about the upcoming program at Rudder High with the Mariachi Estrellas de Plata. Of course, we were thrilled and honored to be asked to help with that. And so with me, I have our Hispanic board president, Irma Pineda, and a few other members that are here, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves and talk to you as well.
Hi, I'm Irma Pineda, and I'm the president this year for 2023, and we have some members here with us as well.
Hi, my name is Mary Lou Adame, and I'm a member of the Hispanic Forum.
Rosa Cantu, and I'm a member of the Hispanic Forum.
Good evening, Jaime Cavazos, Public Relations Officer for the Hispanic Forum.
And so with us, we have a check that we would like to present as a small donation towards the formation. And we also have Christian Rivera, who is going to be directing the mariachi at Rudder High School here with his wife. And so they can come up and accept the check from us.
So on behalf of the Hispanic Forum, we'd like to make a donation towards their goal. And please reach out to us, and I've talked to him a little bit before we started this meeting to say we'd like to partnership or whatever we can do to get that up and running and do a little bit more fundraising, whatever we can do as a Hispanic Forum. We appreciate what you're doing and helping these students and encouraging these students. So it's our pleasure to present you with this donation on behalf of the Hispanic Forum and all the membership.
Just a couple of words. I'm going to keep it short. My name is Christian Rivera, and I'll be the mariachi director at Davila and at Rudder High School. And on behalf of the district, the Fine Arts Department, Principal Layton, and most importantly, the students, Mariachi Estrellas de Plata, we want to express our sincere just gratitude to the Hispanic Forum, because as she mentioned, you know, it's cultural appreciation is very important in this community. And I feel that not just through music, through extracurriculars, you know, I feel students want to go to school sometimes to, oh, I get to go to band, I get to play music, I get to, you know, play sports, I participate in art. And I feel that programs like these help them also excel academically. And we just want to say we're very excited for a very, very wonderful year. And we can't wait to showcase the students' growth to the community. Very excited. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can we take a picture with them?
Wait, can we grab a picture with them? Sure. Do y'all want to go down?
We can.
I can be the token Hispanic if we need to.
It's going to take me a while to be able to say the name of the group. I think it's Silver Star. Tell us the name of the band in English again. It's Silver Star? Silver Star. Let's let. No, I'm good.
I'm sorry, which were us? That's probably the best shot. I think I can see everyone. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Maybe one more on my phone. Feel safe. Just in case. 1, 2, 3, and last one. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much.
Uniforms will be green and beautiful. Very cool.
It's exciting to expand that program. All right, we will go ahead and move into our superintendent update.
Thank you, Dr. Harlan. We'll get the slide deck pulled up. It's always a pleasure to share great things that are happening in our district. And as we just celebrated the donation from the Hispanic Forum, I wanted to shine a light just briefly. There we go. Many of us attended the 25th Annual Scholarship Hispanic Forum Gala on Saturday night at the Brazos Center, and it was just wonderful. So we have a couple of photos. Again, we're grateful for, the gracious donations towards the scholarships that afforded countless kids from Bryan ISD. I must brag that Bryan Collegiate, Bryan High School, and Rudder High School were very much on the receiving end that night. So there's just a couple of photos of the board members and me, and then the Bryan High School Los Vikingos Mariachi Band was there as the opening act, and as always, they were outstanding, a real showstopper. So I can't wait for that group to now work with our new group forming at Rudder. These are just a couple of photos This is a photo of our wonderful counselor at Davila Middle School. She was the recipient. Her name is Lisa Davila Mendez, and she was the recipient as the Educator of the Year for Bryan ISD, representing our wonderful district. And to the right, I know it's hard to see, but there are countless students there on the receiving end of the scholarships. All of these are graduating seniors about to attend college. And then the final slide for this important night, there were two very big, most prestigious, incredible awards given out. One of them we know very well, a Rudder High School student, Mr. Trey Gonzalez, who happens to be Leo Gonzalez's son, received the Master Sergeant Joe E. Ramirez Senior Scholarship in the amount of $5,000. So not only getting to connect with General Ramirez at Texas A&M, but to be the first to receive this prestigious honor was just a really great night for all of Bryan ISD, Rudder High School in particular, and we know that Trey will represent us and make us so proud. The other recipient was Bryan High School valedictorian Gabriel Gomez. He received a $10,000 scholarship for the Student of the Year, and he too will go on to do amazing things. So again, just thank you so much to the Hispanic Forum for their continued support of Bryan ISD students and staff. Moving on, we're just very excited about the countdown to open Sadberry Intermediate. The finishing touches with all of our logos and last minute details, the installation of furniture, et cetera, is well underway. In fact, in a few short days, we're going to invite the rest of our administration team to go and take a tour so that all the other principals in the district can see the building and celebrate this momentous occasion. We can't wait for the first day of school for our students to walk through those doors. The other thing, I've shared just a little bit about this, but the Bryan ISD marketing campaign is well underway. This is one of the billboards that we currently have up, and because it's enrollment season for us, we're advertising the opportunity to enroll your students now into our wonderful school district. So besides the billboard, we have a couple of radio ads, we have increased communication going out to our families, and we have an enhanced website with many details for our families for ease of access regarding all the ways that they can be involved and engaged. And then this is just shining the light on leaders, developing leaders. It's always an honor for a school district employee to go out among the district or the state or the region or even in the nation to represent our district as they go and train others. So in a couple of these photos, you see Dr. Brian Merrill and Dr. Karen Casper were presenting at a principals conference earlier in the summer. Dr. Barbara Ibarra was presenting at a state level conference with colleagues from all across the state. In another photo, you see Jennifer Warren with Josh Woodall presenting at a special education conference. So again, this is just a great honor when our staff members are selected to go out and train others across the state. And then finally, along the same lines, Bryan ISD was actually invited to join forces with TASB at the Summer Leadership Institute a couple of months ago. And these are photos of Dr. Harlan and Felicia Benford. And I'm in one of the screens. And then Deidre Davis, even though she was in Germany, as you know, she presented via video in our presentation. Again, just a great honor for a school board to be asked to present to other school board members across the state about best practices for Team of 8 and developing board goals and putting our leadership into action throughout our community. So again, very great honor to present on this level. So great things continue to happen. We have the administrators are all back on contract, and they're having their 2 big days of training this week, and convocation's right around the corner, so school's about to start, and we're excited for another great year ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Carabine.
Thank you.
All right, we have 2 standing committee updates, and it was pretty easy to figure out who would do these because they're the ones here from these committees. So for Finance Committee, I'm going to ask Mr. Stasny to give a high-level overview of that committee.
So that was your first choice, is what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The only choice.
Yeah. Well, you didn't have to repeat that. But, yes, I was participating along with Dr. Davis and Ms. Carabine and Dr. Barra, Kevin Besaw, Carol Kuhn, and Tiffany Lee. We talked about budget development update. Administration provided an update on the process and a particular interest, not that we could necessarily do a lot about it, but we certainly did discuss the quandary that we're in with regard to the great unknowns of state funding with regard to where, is it going to go anywhere or not? And so we certainly had some discussion about that, and that we're going to hopefully do everything we can within reason to support our staff under the circumstances, and then, of course, wait and see. And then we did also have an update on board policy regarding the accrual of comp time and district practices for promoting work-life balance for staff. Just going to try to monitor that a little better to make sure that we don't have employees that are overdoing it and not really having downtime and family time that they need to have. And that's pretty much it. There's a lot more discussed, but it was a relatively short meeting because we had to combine two into one, so into 1 hour.
Thank you, Mr. Stasny. Next, we'll move to safety and security, and Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Dr. Harlan. Ours was pretty quick as well. We covered some new safety devices. I guess we probably shouldn't go into too much detail, but we did agree on some safety devices that are extremely effective, cost-effective, and as Mr. Stasny and I always say, that's right up our alley. If you can get us cheap and good, so I think it'll be really good. I'm very excited about implementing those new safety features. Then we also covered the glass that has been the bane of my existence at Sadberry, and did get some clarification that it is reinforced glass, so it's not just, I feel much better, and I think it'll be great for everyone, and you know, the glass is a great feature for those children, and I do feel better that it is a barrier. And then, of course, last thing we covered is a little bit about the uncertainty yet of the details on the officers that are going to be required at each district. So we're still trying to figure out. I think we were told, TEA has told us, we'll let you know when we figure something out. And was it TEA? Is that who we're waiting on?
Yes.
And so we're just kind of, again, I expressed the eye-opening that I have experienced on this board thus far, that it seems like if the legislature put something out, it would be extremely clear and concise as to what they wanted. That's what we think, and we as parents, we look in and say, well, why don't they implement what they've been asked to implement? But it's becoming crystal clear that that is not the issue. That is not the case. Rather, that they issue an edict and just kind of leave it at that. So I feel very confident that we will have more information and be able to implement it along with everybody else. And as they reassured me, there's safety in numbers, and pretty much the whole state is in the same boat. So it was a very productive meeting, and I feel very good where we're going. And I do feel very strongly about safety, and I'm proud of what the district's doing to enhance that. Thank you.
All right. Next, we have a few information items. The first, we're going to hear from Dr. Ibarra on the STAR redesign and accountability refresh update.
Thank you, Dr. Harlan. So I'm back again just to provide a little bit more information. We've been talking all year long about the STAR redesign and the accountability refresh. We have some additional information or resources from TEA, and so I wanted to share some of that with you this evening. But a high-level recap and overview of what we've previously discussed is that there are massive changes. There are some pretty big things that are different this year as compared to last year. So when we talk about STAR and EOCs, we're looking at differences in the structure of the assessment, differences in the content. Specifically with the content, we're talking about writing. Instead of just isolating writing to grades 4 and grade 7 as a separate assessment, it's now woven through all of the assessments, including all of the subjects. So every other subject now also has short constructed responses. So mathematics has a short constructed response, as does science and social studies, along with all of the different changes with the types of questions, which is how that structure is differently. We have hot zones where they can do inline drop downs. They can pick areas on an image. A lot of the constructed responses that the kids are writing are separate from this section, but with all of the changes in one place on the assessment, it makes it a lot for a young child to kind of navigate what this new interface looks like. So technology will be a little bit different for them, or was a little bit different for them this year. We also know that along with the STAR and EOC redesign, the accountability system itself was also refreshed. And that goes with the indicators, those cut points, and that methodology. And as the board knows, we started talking about this in November with the team of 8 training. We also got information as the year developed from TEA, and the statement is there and highlighted that it's possible for a campus with an A rating during the 22 school year to improve this year, but actually still come out the accountability system with a lower letter grade and rating. And so it's real important that we truly understand that all of these different indicators and conditions mean that there can be absolutely no comparison last year to this year with any accountability rating that a school or a district may receive because of all of those changes.
Barbara, can I interrupt
Yes,
for a
sir.
second? One of the things that seeming like I saw something or read something that sounded like maybe the cut points hadn't been decided yet. Is that the case?
Yes, that is absolutely the case. So they've determined most of the accountability system, but it's not been approved by TEA yet. They have to post it for so many days. And in fact, they won't approve the accountability manual for all of those indicators until early September. And the cut points, in terms of the cut points for what's passing on an assessment, have not been determined for grades 3 through 8 for any subject at this point. That's that zone of uncertainty that we've talked about previously, where it's
And Barbara,
unknown.
So I know that communication was sent earlier this summer to
Yes, ma'am.
the district and to parents, and it says likely pass or likely not pass.
And zone of uncertainty
And
is the third
zone of
one.
uncertainty. So, yeah, it's,
Yes.
they have not decided.
It's still in development, even though it was last year's assessment results that the kids have all gone on summer break from. And in fact, some have even retested under likely did not, just to give them another opportunity to maybe hit likely did. So there's a lot there that's unknown and uncertain and won't be finalized until August for those scores for the kiddos for grades 3 through 8, and then the accountability manual in early September.
So that could ultimately affect the infamous A through F as well, as far as you.
Yes, all of that is how the A through F is calculated. It's 100% going to impact it.
Well, I
Yes, sir.
watched the video from the commissioner, and I have to say, I did not learn a whole lot. But
Well, we're going to watch it this evening as a group. So
Wanted
that's
to make sure
good.
everyone had access to it. He's been very clear that all districts across the state should expect to drop in their ratings. He's made that very clear at this point.
And that, unfortunately, again, well, we've all said it, and we'll say it one more time, it's going to totally mislead the public. It suggests that we've taken a big step back when that doesn't mean that at all. But that's going to look that way, but that's the sad part of it.
We were just discussing that this morning, Mr. Stasny, with comparing last year's ratings and results for college, career, and military readiness, as well as graduation rates. You can't compare them to last year because it's on a different scale score, and it's not the same way that they're calculating it. It's all different. And so it's hard to, it's going to look, it's very misleading. It's going to look as though ground was lost when in fact the outcomes are better than last year, but under this rating system, it looks lower.
Well, I just still have some sliver of hope, which is just, I haven't lost all my optimism at this age, is that there will be a recognition that it would be very wrong to just simply take what they're doing and say, okay, everybody gets a worse grade, and or most get a worse grade. So we'll see. I don't know that I know there's a lot of belief that there's a conspiracy to undermine public schools, and I certainly hope that's not true, but that would be one way to do it. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox.
No worries. So briefly, let me go through just a few more slides, and we'll listen to Mr. Commissioner Morath and hear what he has to say to school board members. But one of the big changes in how a district rating is ascertained is how they're doing it by the percent of population at each campus. So previously, it's just the same way that a campus would get a calculation, same exact methodology. Instead, they'll be taking In this scenario, you can see Bryan High School represents about 20.9% of the district's population. So Bryan High's Domain 1 score and Domain 2, their ratings, so to speak, will be multiplied by a factor of 20%. And 20% of the district's calculation will be what Bryan High's results were. It does not matter the number of tests taken at the campus. It's about the percentage of children who attend that campus. High schools, as you know, administer the EOC assessments, but also have graduation rates and CCMR, but they have a fewer number of tests as compared to, say, a middle school who are in 8th grade, you take 4-star assessments. In 7th grade, you take 3-star assessments. Whatever the combination is, actually 2 now because no more writing, but you can see that proportionality alone, if you used last year's results from 2022, would drop the district by a factor of about 10 points, a full letter grade. Just that one small change in the calculation has a massive impact on what the results are, and it's different than how campuses are rated. It's a different system. So just things to factor in terms of how they're changing it. This is one of the big things that's impacting that overall score. As the board knows, and based on all of this information and your advocacy, the board developed legislative priorities that are responsive to these changes and asked for the state and the legislature to reconsider some of this and to also ask for a hold harmless for a year so school districts and students and families could understand it and also learn to adapt to those new question types as well as the new content. Additionally, the Board of Trustees passed a resolution in April, appealing to the legislature and the commissioner to do those same things, to be responsive to those changes and to give our kids and our schools time to adjust. In response to some of this feedback, as well as feedback from other districts, the Texas Education Agency has released a communications toolkit for districts to more effectively communicate about these changes to both board members as well as the community at large. And so we have via video a message from Commissioner Morath addressing the STAR redesign and the accountability refresh. Mr. Falls, if you would.
My name is Mike Morath. I'm Commissioner of Education for the state of Texas, and I am a former school board member. I served on the Dallas board for 4.5 years, and school board service is critical. When you think about the role that you play in our republic, you are where the buck stops, the governing body of the local school district, and you are responsible for how well those schools work and how well we serve collectively all 5.5 million souls in Texas public schools across the state of Texas. And thank you for your work. It is hard, daunting, and the pay is pretty terrible for a school board member. So thank you for your work. One of the things that I reflect on as a former school board member, one of the responsibilities that I held, was I needed to know how well our schools were doing in Dallas. Were they the same? Were they getting better? Were they getting worse? And because it was my job to oversee our administrative team and make sure that we were making progress for kids. And so what the agency does, what TEA does to try to help improve your ability to govern your school district is we provide A through F ratings, which then gives a summative evaluation of all of your schools. And so every year when A through F ratings come out, you can take a look at the ratings. You can then compare them to last year, and you can say, are my schools getting better? Are they about the same? Are they getting a little worse? And you can then help build action plans with your administrative team accordingly to support our kids. What has been true for A through F for the last 5 years, really since 2017, is it's been basically the same system. The cut points have been basically the same. The mechanics have been basically the same. We evaluate schools holistically on the better of student proficiency or student growth. As you all well know, evaluating schools is complex. Our little humans are very complex creatures, and so trying to get a single picture of performance is difficult, but A through F does that very holistically. And the fact that it has remained unchanged since 2017 is also super helpful because you can then look at this year's results, your teachers can look at this year's results, your parents can look at this year's results and see, is the school getting better? What kind of progress are we making for kids? It was not always like that in Texas with the school rating system. Before the A through F system, the agency, the way TEA worked, would tweak the ratings every single year. That they basically raise cut scores ever so slightly any given year. And that was good in terms of setting goals that are constantly higher and helping us push forward for kids. But it made life really confusing as a school board member in Dallas in my old life, because I would have a hard time figuring out, are last year's results the same or better than this year's results? But the downside of what we've done over the last 5 years is we do want to constantly get better for kids. We want to make sure that we are setting higher and higher goals. In fact, the statute that sets up A through F requires us to continuously increase cut scores to ensure that Texas is a national leader in preparing kids for post-secondary success. So this year we are refreshing the A through F rating system. We will be using the information that we've gleaned over the last 5 years, all the feedback that we get from educators, from parents and others, to update the way the ratings work. And what that also means is that the ratings that you look at this year cannot be easily compared with last year's ratings. There's a few places where cut scores are actually changing, in some cases going up, and so it will no longer lead to an apples-to-apples comparison. So to try to make life easier for you, what we are doing is we're publishing preliminary what-if ratings using last year's data, but using the new rating system calculations. And so that way, when ratings come out this fall, you will be able to compare this year's actual ratings with last year's sort of hypothetical what-if calculation ratings. And that way you can have a good apples-to-apples comparison on performance. We're going to also put those hypothetical what-if ratings up on texasschools.gov so that when parents or teachers or anybody in the community looks to evaluate year-over-year performance, they can compare this year's performance with last year's performance using this year's metrics. And so we hope that this helps make the job that you have as a school board easier. But it's also going to be important for all of us to kind of communicate about this to make sure everybody's on the same page. So we'll be communicating more about this in the fall when ratings come out. We have provided your superintendent with hypothetical, what are preliminary what-if ratings so they can go over those with you. And there's a lot more details if you want to get into the mechanics of it. We have all that information on our website and provided that information to your superintendent. But I wanted to just talk to you directly about these changes because I knew that this would be important for me as a former school board member, and hope that this is valuable for you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for the service that you do for our kids. School boards are critical to the foundation of our democracy and to highly functioning school systems. God bless you for what you do.
I can't believe it worked. Doing this one.
Me either. Before you start, I just want to make sure everyone understands the good work of the executive team, Barbara in particular, for bringing this information forward since back in November. We've been trying to give you small amounts of it all along the way. Many districts, I guess, have held off until right now to start telling their boards, but we felt it was important to digest it all along the way. One thing he made mention of, we've talked about this for the last 5 years, and now is the time to do the refresh and to change the assessment. What we didn't anticipate 5 years ago was a global pandemic. I mean, we literally shut our nation down, and our students were not even in school. We were doing our very best we could to, teach them via a computer in a Zoom meeting. So this is really disheartening for every public school in the state of Texas because we're going through these massive changes and on the heels of the global pandemic where we literally closed our school buildings. So the timing is very interesting. And however, we remain steadfast and we're going to keep working with kids and do our very best to serve them to our fullest ability. Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. There was one point where he talked about making Texas a global leader in education. Mm-hmm. And my response to that is, why don't you start with funding our schools as opposed to focusing on changing every part of an accountability system? So he's exactly right. We can't compare apples to apples, and even if we use the methodology on the old data, yes, it's different data at the end of the day. So there's a lot of things that don't make sense to me about what he said, but it's the system we live in, it's the system we'll continue to work in, and this board is committed to making sure our students succeed and that our teachers feel supported, so we'll continue to do that.
Thank you, Dr. Harlan. So utilizing those what-if scores that the commissioner has provided and that TEA has given us, last year's, or 2022, when I say last year, I'm going to go with 21-22, the district received its highest rating overall, which was an 86. Using all of those results, we don't have this year's results, so using all of those results under this new methodology, the district's rating would have been a 75. So that's when we say that that's the marker and we compare it to this year's results, we still can't do that. And Dr. Harlan, it's to your point. Even if we said, okay, well then it was a 75, where are we now? There's different content on the assessments this year. There are a different number of assessments this year, and there are different question types, significantly different question types. It's not the same experience. Further, the cut points are all different for every grade level and subject as a result of those changes, which we still don't know because it's the zone of uncertainty. And so while the what-if scores are helpful of anticipating what the impact is in terms of the ratings on what it would have been, there's still not an apples-to-apples comparison when every test is different. And every test has changed in structure as well as content in the coming year. As the board recalls, we did share what the schools would be under, again, that same methodology, utilizing their results from the 21-22 school year, their assessment results, and utilizing the new methodology that is proposed. What would their ratings have been under that methodology? And you can see the impact for each of the campuses as well as the district. Again, just reminding what we've already shared. In terms of timeline, back to Mr. Stasny, your point earlier, we are still awaiting performance levels, those cut points, for STAR grades 3 through 8. That's anticipated to be released in early August with availability to families on August 16th. We do have those results for EOCs, but again, students are still retesting, so those aren't final either. They retested in June based on that information. Early September, the accountability manual for last year will be adopted and finalized. And then September 28th, there will be a public release of what those ratings will be for last year. So we'll have the final ratings and everything by the end of September because, again, we are still in that zone of uncertainty. We're waiting to see for grades 3 through 8, all subjects, what those cut points will be and what the results will be for those students. Again, parents will expect their results on August 16th for grades 3 through 8, and EOCs have arrived, but again, we're waiting for the next round to come in based on the summer administration, so those are not set yet either. So again, in conclusion, just going back, this is a big year of change, and as Dr. Harlan and Mrs. Carabine have already mentioned, we appreciate an accountability system. We agree with assessments. We just want to make sure it's communicated clearly and understood by our community, and specifically our parents, and how we help their children move forward in the best possible way.
Are we sending this out? I know, and I think I've asked this before, and honestly, I've just forgotten the answer. When we send out things now to our parents, I assume I don't get the parent stuff anymore. So, are we kind of opening the door a little bit, trying to have a soft landing versus when we went from a B to a C? Have we started any of that information already directly to the parents?
So we've done information regarding when you can expect your scores, but in terms of the accountability refresh, it's been pretty much in the boardroom and along with administration. But what's new and different, Mr. Falls and the communications team have been working on a timeline leading up to that September, where we start to put that information in front of families now as they're receiving the results and that they understand these significant changes to what that represents for their school in terms of their rating. You'll get your child's result, but then you also check out how did their school do, and you don't want it to be misinterpreted
Well,
by the
I
community.
just think if we get a jump on it personally, I think if we break it, we sometimes I think we don't give parents enough credit, especially if you present it 3 or 4 times between now and the time. the
Multiple
scores come out.
opportunities to
Yeah.
receive it,
And I
yes, sir.
think the challenge is there's still
We
a
don't
lot
know.
that's unknown. So it's hard to talk about people about a zone of uncertainty or likely did not pass.
But I think if
What
you
does
tell them,
that mean?
it's possible,
Big
if you said
changes.
something as easy as, hey, this is straight from TEA, they are changing up our accountability, and they have let us know that even if we stay the same, we may fall a grade. Just want everybody to be aware, we're working on that and trying to get clarification. I would rather know ahead than
Agreed.
looking like we're trying to cover up at the last second going, oh my gosh, we didn't know we were going to go from a B to a C. If we prepare for the worst and we stay at a B, everything's wonderful. If we go from a B to a C, at least we'll have, in my opinion, as a parent, I would have liked
Prepared.
to have known, okay, I haven't been totally just sideswiped by this. They did mention it before, so just a personal opinion, I think it would be better to give them information sooner than later.
Yeah, Mr. Gonzalez, you're absolutely right, and we do have a plan with Mr. Falls to have a slow release so that we can start to tell the front end of the story, to expect the change and the why behind the drop, so that when the actual results do arrive, they will have some background information.
Okay.
We were very strategic in bringing this to the board. I believe this is our 4th time now, just to get the information out to the media and to our community at large so that it's not such a shock. Again, the commissioner, I think he waited way too late for his message. That's why I feel very confident in what we've done to start telling you guys all the way back to November. So, but we will absolutely start to say some things. We were, again, strategic to bring the information tonight. We will talk to our administrative team this week. We'll talk about it at convocation to the whole team, and then we'll start to put some things out in writing to parents as school starts back up before the real scores drop. So,
Gotcha. Yeah, just like I said,
again,
a little prep, I think, would go a
yes,
long.
without making excuses. We don't want
Right.
to say
No, no,
we're
no,
making
no, absolutely
excuses and
not.
we regret what's happened, but we just want to tell the truth and be very transparent
That's
about
what I
what.
was about to say. If we just
what
tell them, here's where we are.
TEA actually said it
Yes, ma'am.
best.
That's exactly what I'm saying. If you show them, this is not us, this is TEA saying you can go from a B to a C.
Well, and Dr. Barr, I'm very glad that you went out of your way to say that we're not anti-assessment, we're pro-assessment. I go back to when you were I was on the board when you were in the 5th grade, so in fact,
They didn't even have assessment tests, did they? When they started.
I can
No,
recall
we've
when-
always had them.
I can recall when we pretty much left it up to the teachers to decide if somebody did a good job or not. And that worked fine with some teachers. I don't think it worked well with all teachers. And so I think that it was recognized when some kids were graduating and maybe weren't able to read and write very well, that we had a problem. And it certainly wasn't everywhere, but it was in pockets. So there was a reaction to that, and this is, assessment is where we are, and it's not going to go away. But as has been said, and I would certainly second that, is it needs to be fair, and it needs to be taking into account that no 2 children are alike, and that therefore the scientific method of evaluating what school is good and what is bad is pretty problematic. It's in fact, if you really want to use what's called the scientific method, it's impossible. You're going to have to work a whole lot harder to get to what is being accomplished and what's not. So I'm saying this because I know some people may be listening to this now or later, and they need to know. We really, really want every kid to do well. We are not making excuses. We just don't want the public to be misled about what is being said about us, and possibly destroying the morale of some really, really fine teachers and staff.
Yes, sir.
Agree completely.
May I ask one more question?
Certainly.
So going from last year's, you said we would go from 86 to 75.
Yes, sir.
Have we happened to check anybody to the south to see what theirs would be? Just curious.
They don't publish those out just yet.
Oh, that's right.
It's only for each individual district. Now, what will happen in September, late September, when they do the what-if results for the state, they will make those public as well. But essentially, every one of the states going down between 8 to 12 points from wherever they are at this moment.
Okay. Again, thank you for all your work.
Absolutely.
I'm sure that the counselors with those EOC scores have their job cut out for them now, working with each individual student to get them, because they have to have all those hours of not remediation, but, you know,
There are individualized graduation committees and those supports from the House Bill 4545 for the accelerated learning and tutoring. Yes, ma'am. They have taken that list and they're working with the kids. Now that we do have the EOCs from the first round of results, we don't have second round at this point.
okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
I was afraid we wouldn't even have those as early as we did get them. I saw them came in a couple of weeks ago, I think, or maybe it was before.
Right around graduation.
And, so, anyway, there's a lot of people working like beautiful little ducks, looking beautiful on the top, and their little legs are going 100 miles an hour under the water.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's frustrating to see kids be in the middle
Right.
of this because.
Very much so.
When assessments change midstream, you know, this impacts them from a high-stakes standpoint of graduate, don't graduate, or
Well, and how they've
progress,
been
don't
preparing.
progress. Yeah,
They've been preparing for an assessment. They've been getting maybe closer each year, have a little further to go maybe still. And now the assessment is structured differently and has additional writing elements that are now required as well.
And a lot of these seniors were eighth graders when COVID hit. I mean, these kids have really been impacted by that year and a half that school was not. And to have this happen to them just kind of, to me, it's just like one more unfair thing that's happening to them.
and Dr. Ibarra, remind me what our percentage of English language learners is here in Bryan ISD?
Approximately 24%.
Right. And so now all of our children are being asked to write in these exams more, so they're being evaluated in a very different way. So I hope people understand the implications of that
Yes,
on our
ma'am.
children.
Not only explain it to our staff and the parents, but it's going to be important that we explain it to the students,
That's true.
because they're going to be more confused than we are, and everybody, about what's actually going on, because that's sad that we have to figure out a way to explain to them that they're not doing anything wrong, that they're still progressing, but it's just,
It can be a challenge to explain to a third through eighth grader, what does it mean to be in the zone of uncertainty? So,
It
But-
can be hard for adults to understand, so.
thankfully, we do have the item analysis, the question by question and what standard it was. So while we may not know their exact outcome, we know what their needs are. And so we focus now on these are the standards that were the struggle for one child, and here's what we recommend to support that child's educational progress. So we are taking action despite the zone of uncertainty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll end on that note.
Yeah. All right. So next, we are going to move to our student attendance campaign, and we're going to welcome up Crystal Goodman, Dr. Brian Merrill, and Linda Montoya.
Good evening. So we're going to share some information about our Bryan ISD attendance campaign for this upcoming school year. So the reason why we're doing an attendance campaign, for students to be successful in school, first and foremost, they must be in school. And students with chronic attendance issues, starting at the very low grade levels, are those students that are not reading on grade level by grade 3. Also, children of poverty and children with disabilities and students of communities of color are 2 to 3 times more likely to be disproportionately affected. And then early absenteeism predicts later absenteeism. So our goal in Bryan ISD is, of course, for every student to graduate from high school and be prepared for post-secondary opportunities and jobs. So if you'll look at this graph, this gives us information from 2019 to 2023 of chronic absenteeism. So if you look at the 2019 graph, this is done by our levels. Our high school is the red, our middle schools are the green, the orange is the intermediate school, and the blue is the elementary school. So if we look at 2019, and you go ahead to 2023, this past school year, we've doubled in chronic absenteeism from 2019 to 2023, except for in the elementary level, which went from 10.17% to 12.98%. So our chronic absenteeism in the district is at 19.88%. And chronic absenteeism are those students who are missing 18 days or more of school during the school year. To look at it by numbers, at the high school level, we had 1,781 students. At the middle school, 429. Intermediate school, 401. And at the elementary school, 985. So those are the number of students that missed 18 days or more during this past school year. So when we look at absenteeism, if we look at the traditional approach, it's more of a punitive approach where somebody from the office, the attendance clerk or the registrar makes a phone call home to parents when a child's not in school. We do our warning letters, we do parent conferences, and then we have truancy court. So it's more of a reactive model, and we have found there's very limited positive effects. So we're going to look at a new model, and it's more of a based on positive behavioral intervention and supports. And the new model beliefs are that behavior can be changed. We're going to focus more on prevention and proactive measures. And we're going to look at the root cause. Why is the child not coming to school? Or why are the kids not coming to school? And so it'll be more of a supportive model. So our guiding principles of this new model will be looking at all absences, whether they're excused, unexcused, or suspension-based. Every campus will have a focused, effective campus attendance team. All stakeholders will be involved, so everybody at the campus, from the administration all the way down to our paraprofessionals, our juvenile case managers, our dropout prevention specialists, our students, and our families and our community members. And we're finding that you cannot punish students into wanting to attend school. So with our attendance campaign, school leadership, we met with a group of principals as well as some district staff, and these are the things that we're looking at doing for this upcoming school year. Developing a slogan. We've already shared this with all of the principals, but we'll be talking about it more at our Administrator Institute this week, and we'll do a kickoff at our convocation. We'll be doing campus and classroom kickoffs at the beginning of the year. We're going to get publicity at back to school and parent nights. We'll be sending a letter home to parents, social media posts, publicize at community events. I'll show you in just a few minutes we've created a attendance magnet that we'll be sending home to all parents so that they'll be able to track their child's attendance. District-wide and school-wide competitions and incentives, and attendance will be a daily focus at every campus. So in working with our principals, our slogan that we're going to use this year is SOAR to Success, 9 days or less, but exemplary is best. So we want to keep, if we had every one of those kids that were chronically absent, if we could get them to be at school at the most 9 days, they would fall into, where their attendance would be okay. So our next one shows the attendance tracker that we're going to send home to every parent. Campuses will also be able to use this, so if a teacher wants to use it in her classroom, they could use a paper copy of this. So it has the Bryan ISD calendar at the bottom, the school calendar, And if you look up there at the top where you see the traffic light, it tells you that a chronic absence is 18 or more days. To be just in the warning level is 10 to 17 days. Satisfactory is 9 or fewer days. And then we know there are students that shoot for that perfect attendance, that they want perfect attendance, and that will be in the exemplary area in 0 to 3 days. And so, we find if a child misses 1 day of school, they've missed out on perfect attendance. And we know that most often a child is going to get sick at least one time during the school year. So once they haven't gotten that perfect attendance, then that kind of knocks them out of some of the incentives and all. So we're going to do exemplary, which is 0 to 3 days.
And I'm
So-
sure you have, I'm sorry, and if you're getting here, excuse me, but I know we get paid by the attendance. Do you have the numbers in here? Are we getting to that on what we're losing?
I
by-
don't.
Okay,
don't
I'm
have
just
that.
curious. I know it has to be
Yeah.
if you're pushing.
Yeah, we were focusing
On the
more,
good.
more on the academic
Okay.
part of it. We need them in school if we're going to teach them and
Okay.
want them to make progress.
I will just acknowledge that's an unintended consequence that would be in our favor.
Yes, ma'am.
But it's not about the money. It's simply, we need the kids at school so that we can teach them. For them to be guaranteed a viable, written, tested, taught curriculum, they need to be at school. So that's the big push. It's not at all about the money, although that would be a nice
Well, I just figured
unintended
if we knew how
consequence.
much money we were losing, it also helps us know we need to push more to you guys to make this happen. So if you look at it.
Yes, and Mr. Besaw can give us that
Need to
number.
ask him.
Believe me, he knows it.
Haunts him at night.
But again, we didn't want to send a message to parents that we're doing this because it's all
Gotcha, that
about
makes sense.
average daily attendance. It's truly because we
Yes, ma'am.
want the kids to be
That
at
makes-
school with us.
That makes sense.
So if you'll notice in the middle of this, the tracker, it gives the parents an opportunity, so when their child is absent, they can mark on the attendance tracker and they can see whether they're going to fall into the exemplary, the satisfactory, up to a chronic absence. So our goal for this upcoming school year will be that during the 23-24 school year, all Bryan ISD students will miss 5% or fewer school days. So with the hopes that many of them are going to fall into the 0 to 3 or the exemplary range. Any questions?
I have a question. It sounds like you're on the right track, and I guess it's probably some studies have suggested that punitive actions are not that effective. It is very frustrating to understand why it's gone up so much. And so that leads me to ask if surely somebody out there has done some studies and tried to gather information about why these students are not going to class.
So, David, I'll just jump. So when we saw the big change was COVID,
Well, I know.
where school became suddenly optional for
sure.
people. So, I think it's a national sort of
It's nationwide.
phenomenon of how do we make school relevant again, where people feel like it's not optional.
Yeah.
So, I think we were probably on the right track prior to COVID, and then COVID
Absolutely.
just sent us into spiral along with everyone else.
Yeah, the year prior to COVID, the overall attendance in the district was over 95%. And the year prior to that, it was closer to 96% district-wide.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not
And
I'm certainly aware that COVID was a huge factor,
Yeah.
but now the concern I have is yes, it's a carryover, but I still wonder if anybody's done a study now that we are past COVID.
Yeah.
What is going on? Yes, you can say, well, they just got in the habit of not going to school, but there may be more to the story. And I would agree, and we're not going to fix it for every kid, that where we have a new mariachi program, that's going to help. Where we have anything that attracts kids to go to school, that's going to help. But I just want to make sure that we're leaving no stone unturned with regard to cause.
Yeah.
And that's not just studies that might have been done by some university group or whatever, but also other districts. Is anybody else? Are there bright lights out there?
So Linda, why don't you share what you went
Yeah,
to?
share about the
Okay.
conference that you.
Yeah, so I went to the
Oh, I'm sorry.
Leadership
You haven't
Academy
gotten to that part yet? Okay, go ahead.
at
Like,
Safe
we
and
want answers now.
Yeah,
the Safe and Civil Schools Leadership.
You did ask for questions, I'm sorry.
It was a leadership academy in January, and so they actually have a book, and so a lot of this research and all we're taking from that. The book is called School Leaders Guide to Tackling Attendance Challenges. I've also been attending some of the Attendance Works organizations, some of their webinars and all, and so there are principals and all from all over the United States, and it's a nationwide problem. But what we're going to do differently than what we've been doing is try to get to the root of the problem. Why are they not coming to school? Is it a transportation problem? Is it, what is causing them not to come? So with our interventions, instead of starting off where we have like an attendance person or a registrar calling, the first step is going to be the teacher. The teacher's the one who has the relationship with the parents, with the kids, so they will be the first in making contact with that parent because they do have the relationship and trying to find out why they're not coming to school. And then they'll also, one of the other strategies was to do planned discussions where they actually sit down with the child and try to figure out why they're not coming to school and trying to get a plan into place. So more of a supportive model and trying to find some interventions that will help the child in getting them to come to school. As you move through the interventions, it moves into getting the child a mentor, somebody at the campus who they have a good relationship with. So there are interventions that we'll start with. It'll start with the teacher, and then there's secondary so there's some kids that don't come to school because they're struggling academically. So let's get them into tutoring, let's get them into some social skills and those kinds of things. Up to where we would offer like a mentor or somebody at the campus where it's more of a tier 3 intervention.
In part, all of this plays right into our initiative to engage families and to partner with our community on a deeper level so that we can help parents understand, because there's also a misconception that you can be absent in pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, because it doesn't matter. Well, those years are critically important because we're building the foundation. So we just want to make sure that parents are informed about the importance of being at school so that we can teach them everything that they need to know to be successful in subsequent years of school and to ultimately graduate. But again, it is a nationwide phenomenon. I'm excited that Linda went to this conference and brought back all these good ideas. We're going to give it a go. We're going to pull back from the punitive approach because it's simply not working. It's not working in Bryan ISD or other districts in the state and nation. So we're going to take another approach and try to tackle it in a different way. And we picked 9, knowing, well, that sounds, crazy to say don't be absent more than 9 times. We would like them to be 0 to 3 days. But if you look at our chronic absenteeism, 9 was a good start. Maybe we can make remarkable improvement and next year be less than 7 days or 5 days, and go with that approach. The other thing was with truancy court, that has changed drastically over the years, and I think it would be safe to say that there's not as much teeth in it.
That's right.
When I was
It's changed dramatically.
The laws have changed over the years to where if they earn a certain percentage of the household income, you cannot call truancy. If you, medical issues, which we work with families, but you still hold them accountable. And so when the laws changed, it took away some of our authority in enforcing, students to get to school. And we're excited about this because it's looking through a different lens. It's more encouraging than punitive, and it's really working with our families.
Makes it really practical. I think unfortunately our judges were even put in bad places with some of the laws as we see. And so they've been put in a position where really they have, this sounds crazy, little authority to compel the kids to go to school and force them to go to school. So they're out of options. And we have a wonderful relationship with our judge. And we talk every year. We text, call, whatever we need to in certain situations. They're very, 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 very limited in what they're actually able to do. I'm thankful for the partnership with Safe and Civil Schools, and I know that was mentioned, and that's the conference that she went to. We were really probably one of the early districts to identify that, look, this is a problem, because what's happened is Safe and Civil has been booked up. And And if we were not already in a relationship with them and already had contracts, it would be very, very difficult to tap into the very question that you said, Mr. Shazzy, which is, where's the research tell us to go? And Safe and Civil, because they work nationwide, if not worldwide, they're bringing all of that research, all of that literature together, and they're forming best practices for districts. And then you go to conferences, or you go to webinars, or y'all have approved for them to come here. And so in that, that's really where all of those best practices start coming in. They're looking at what's on the landscape and adjusting what was done to what is done, and then we're the beneficiary of it. So again, thankful for that, because I don't really and truly, when we start booking dates, it's difficult, and we're existing customers. Other districts aren't able to get in because they're just so booked out.
And I know our transportation department, I know they did last year, I hope they continue this year, that if, kids missed a bus or something went on, the parents at work, they did send the white fleet out to give them a ride.
The White Fleet is up and running. They do a really good job.
They did do that. I didn't think they would, and I called, and they sent the kids out to pick them up. They had missed the bus. They sent the White Fleet, and they picked them up and took them to school.
No more excuses, like, dang it.
So we'll still have
They were standing there waiting.
automated phone calls and letters.
Yes.
We still have RAWE and all the automated systems. All those are still in place. We're not removing those. So we still have that other side of it.
And I know that, teachers, it's gonna be a change for them to think that they need to call about just absences. A lot of them do already.
They do. That's right.
But, a lot of them depend on those automated phone calls, because they're the academic person, and I think it won't take much for teachers to do that, but I think that it'll be very effective if the automated phone call goes home, the kid makes up some excuse, then the teacher calls, and the kid can't undermine the teacher telling the parent that indeed he was not in my, class today. So I think it's going to be really effective. Be nice if all 6, 7, 8 teachers called.
Yeah.
But, yeah, wouldn't that, boy,
Yep.
those,
Yep.
that parent, you better get to school. I don't want all those phone calls every day.
We added, I think it was either last year or in the middle of last year, automated text messaging as well. And that was the change that really, what we found is, you're aware, what we found is that sometimes the phone calls, they're helpful, and then they get ignored because you're like inundated.
Right.
with
The
them.
text
But the text messaging really was an add-on that we paid for that was helpful.
Will, in extreme circumstances, mostly when you probably can't find whoever it is, will you use truancy court?
We do. Yes, ma'am, we still will. That's still up and running.
Who's the judge? Do we have?
Judge Hill.
Judge Hill.
Oh, okay.
He's
okay.
retiring, isn't he?
Yeah, he did. He
Yeah.
has the voice or whatever.
We also use our juvenile case manager to go and knock on doors, and our campus staff knock on doors, checking who we have for our families.
The high schools each have a dropout prevention specialist as well. It's on their campus that works with
And
attendance as well.
I'm excited about having teachers engage more and, owning that role, but I also know they're inundated with all the things, so I'm cautious about adding one more thing without us providing support for when they do identify issues, who helps them?
Right. Well,
solve.
Assistant principals, so.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
They do, and if there's something chronic, then they would take it to their RTI team as well.
Okay,
It's already built in for them to meet, and it become part of the DBT. All of those processes in place. That's really a whole, that's the other arm of calling, truancy, letters going out. We have a whole system that documents that when you log into it, it brings it to the front of the page that the assistant principals have to click to put the letters out, warning letter 1, warning letter 2, to eventually put that tracking in place so that if they do go to truancy court, it's all really flushed out.
well, and I hope what students feel is that someone cares about me. Not that I'm in trouble again and, but that someone cares enough to check in and check up on me. So, the letters and stuff, I know part of that's just documentation, right? But it's the messaging of, I hope we're providing teachers with a script of here's the kinds of things you say when you call.
And there is a script.
Okay.
We absolutely will do that. But you're exactly right. It's all about that relationship.
Right. Awesome.
Yep.
Any other questions? Well, thank you all for
Thank
your
you.
efforts. I really like the little checkbox calendar that. I'd be a little worried, like in the springtime when we had all those FFA contests and baseball games. I don't know how many days we might have missed, Brian. We might have been over the line, but. Okay, yeah. Okay, just checking, yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right, next, we're going to hear about athletics year in review from Janice Williamson, Director of Athletics.
I thought we'd have like streamers like at the games coming down.
Good evening. It was indeed a great year for athletics, and I'm very excited to share some of the highlights with you. So far, there we go. So far this summer, our kids have been going through strength and conditioning and sports-specific workouts and so forth, getting ready for their first official practice. And what that means to our kids is all the fall sports, cross-country, volleyball, football, water polo, and team tennis, they all will begin on July 31st, with the exception of Rudder football, who went through spring training. So they're going to be a week behind. So Rudder football doesn't start until August 7th. So when we look at the pep rally that we've got coming up, they couldn't work out. They're not allowed to at this point. Both Rudder and Bryan have been growing their cross-country programs. Andrew Shields actually advanced to the regionals this year. Rudder had their very first ever cross-country meet that they hosted, and so we're seeing them build more and more. All summer long, I've seen kids out running cross-country. They do it in the morning, and they're very devoted to their sport. Bryan volleyball returned to the playoffs. Both of the teams, both Rudder and Bryan High School, had girls signed to move on and play at the next level. Academic success, though, is actually very much a priority for our teams. And we had 5 academic all-state players from Bryan and Rudder. So that tells you that we're pushing academics, we're working on athletics, and the teams are doing well. But Rudder actually is in the toughest district, or one of the toughest districts in the state, basically in all sports. But we're seeing a lot of growth, a lot of progress, and the kids are loving playing for their coaches. Academics has actually been a priority for our football teams as well. Very proud of the fact that we didn't lose any varsity football player this past year. And we want to work to move that down among all of them. But the fact that Bryan High School had 5 all-state academic players in football was a real success. We had 6 players signed to play at the next level, with some underclassmen committing to schools, and the Vikings made the playoffs again to make it 3 in a row. Once again, Rudder, very tough district, but they're growing. They had a very young team, and we think they're going to bring it on next year. Our winter sports are basketball, soccer, wrestling, and powerlifting. And the Viking girls, it was exciting, returned to the playoffs after a 6-year absence. The Viking boys were young. They started 3 freshmen on the varsity team. So we have a new coach with Keith Jackson, and we're looking forward to even better play from them last year. The real exciting success this year was Rudder boys basketball. And they were co-champions, made it to the regional tournament. So that means they were not only co-district, but they were by-district area and then regional. And the teams that knocked them out of the regional tournament went deep at the state tournament itself. Kevin Holmes actually won numerous awards. He was the MVP, Eagle Brazos Valley Player of the Year, so forth and so on. But Coach Carabine was selected to coach one of the All-Star teams, Coach of the Year, and very exciting. If you missed it, then I'm sorry, but
You're lost.
it was a ton of fun, The soccer, the Viking boys and girls soccer teams made the playoffs. Each of the teams had 2 academic all-state players. In addition, they had numerous all-district players. Rudder's soccer is continuing to grow and get more players out, and looking forward to a lot of good play from them next year. Both Bryan and Rudder had very exciting wrestling seasons, resulting in Rudder's Jaden Williams and Bryan's Nick Gorman placing 3rd at the UIL state tournament. In addition, there were 11 boys and 12 girls that made it to the regional tournament. Bryan and Rudder powerlifting, we had 3 players continue the winning ways and tradition. Austin Pennington, Tracy Mola, and Hunter McGarry all made it to the state powerlifting finals. Moving on to the spring sports, we've got softball, baseball, track and field. The Rudder and Bryan softball teams had 2 players from each of those teams signed to play at the next level. They had many all-district players, but more importantly to me, each of them worked to make our community a better place through community service. And if you take a look, the softball team donated over 300 pounds of food to the local food bank. Our baseball teams had a good year as well. In Rudder's district, the team that won it won the national, excuse me, I was going to give them elevation, but they won.
I was going to take it.
they won the state championship, and Rudder was in all those games. They just came up a little bit short. We do have a new coach that we're looking to hire. Still going through the process, but looks very exciting to us. Got a lot of great recommendations on him. The baseball team from Bryan made the playoffs for the 2nd straight year, and both Bryan and Rudder celebrated all district selections, and Bryan's Ben Torres signed to play at Ranger Junior College. So throughout, we're seeing more and more of our kids have the opportunity to move up to the next level and play ball. Track and field was also a lot of fun. If any of you had a chance to go watch, Rudder Track and Field had a record-breaking year qualifying for state in the girls 4x2 100-meter relay, and Nate Figures placed 3rd in the state high jump. He was actually ranked 4th nationally, and the interesting thing, when he was at the Texas relays, the coach from South Carolina asked or told him if he could jump 7 foot, that he would award him a scholarship, and he got 7-1 and got the scholarship. I think up here somehow got a little confused with North and South, but he did sign with South Carolina, not North Carolina. In addition, it wasn't just at state, but we have multiple athletes that made it to the regional meet. Bryan Track and Field had a successful year as well. Tyson Turner placed 3rd at state. He's an amazing young man as well. In addition, Terrence Lewis made it to the regional meet. There's now, if any of you were track in high school, it was district and then regional. Now there's a middle ground, and that's the area meet. So we had a lot of kids make it to the area meet, and ended up with Tyson Turner placing third at state. Our year-round sports, tennis, golf, gymnastics, swim, and water polo. This past year was the first year for water polo, and we jumped right in. There were a lot of schools that chose not to, but we decided that, hey, let's make history and give it a shot. We need to work on recruiting a few more kids, but they were excited to get out there and get in the water. Tennis at Rudder and Bryan continue to grow and show improvement. They won medals in many of the tournaments, and they share a goal of commitment to character building and to community service. So our coaches are not just pushing wins and whatever. We're trying to help make our young people better women, better men, and mothers, fathers, people that are going to contribute to our community. Very proud of them. Both the Bryan and Rudder golf teams are continuing to grow. The golf team's kind of interesting. Many of them are members of the National Honor Society, band, orchestra, and choir. So they have mixed range of interests and so forth and represent our schools in many different areas. Gymnastics continued its great run. You can always expect somebody from the gymnastics teams to be at the state tournament. And our girls won the regional tournament. Our boys qualified. And so the state meet was hosted in College Station, and our kids represented as well. Swimming and water polo, this is a picture of some of the kids, and they did represent us well. We have a new coach coming in, and looking forward to some great things from them as well. The last thing, I was told to make this brief, is facility upgrades, and really do want to thank you guys for helping make our facilities good for our kids. The press box at Rudder High School is going to allow the soccer workers to be out of the weather and to give them the opportunity to host possibly some tournaments and so forth. And then the scoreboard at Merrill Green, they came in this past week, took it down on one day, put up their new one, and it's ready to go. So look forward to being able to utilize it for the upcoming community pep rally. Any questions? Sorry, I went through that very fast. But
congratulations on a successful year.
Absolutely.
The thing I'm the most proud of, I think, is that we've hired coaches who are men and women of character who lead our kids, teach them the right way, and help them be successful as well.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan.
Thank you.
All right, moving along. Next information item, we're going to hear about our district budget process overview from our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, Kevin Besaw.
Good evening, Board. Thank you, Dr. Harlan. Just want to go through a little bit and kind of give everybody an idea of where we are in the process and where we stand based on our current year budget as well. Okay, so basically we always start out with our board goals, district goals, and keep those in mind when we're developing the budget and where we're going to spend our dollars and make sure that we're aiming at these targets. This is just a timeline, so we've received our preliminary values April 30th. We've had Finance Committee meeting tonight, of course, is the July board meeting. On the 25th of July or before, we will receive our certified values from the appraisal district. Those then get sent off to TEA. This is something that came about in House Bill 3 in 2019. Then TEA will put all districts' property values in the state in their system. and they will generate our maintenance and operations rate. That's dictated by them. We'll come back. We have another finance committee meeting. We'll talk about that, and then, of course, budget update at the August board workshop, where we'll have a lot of these numbers and things worked out. And then on the August night meeting, we'll have a public hearing, of course, to adopt our tax rates and set our budget. Just to say a little bit about where we have been and looking forward. As of August 31, 2022, which was our last fiscal year end, our unassigned fund balance, which is dollars that are not restricted, was just under $41 million. That's equal to about 90 days of operating expenditures. Board policy recommends that the district maintain between 60 and 90 days of operating expenditures, and that's also an indicator on the first rating, which we receive points for. Something else to keep in mind, the ESSER funds, we keep looking at those. We do have indirect cost is what it's referred to, but that can be transferred to the general fund. So we will recoup for the September 23, that's the ESSER 2 indirect costs of $3 million. And then September of 24, when ESSER finally ends, that would be recouping $6.8 million. And then as the 2023 budget, we're coming down to the end of that. Just want to remind, in August of 2022, so almost a year ago, the original adopted budget was negative $4.5 million. Changes in that as we've gone through increases from revenue, investment earnings. Of course, everyone keeps an eye. We're paying more interest, but we're also receiving more interest. So roughly about $2 million of extra earnings there in interest. The distribution for the TIA payments, the teacher incentive allotment, that was about $2.2 million. And then the ESSER 2 indirect costs that I mentioned, a little over $3 million. So roughly an increase in revenue of about $7.5 million. And then decreases the payroll accrual, which is a timing entry. Basically, we're starting school this year, or the teachers come back on contract 3 days earlier than they did last year. So in order to, the auditors require us to match our revenues and expenditures as best we can. So we will book 3 days of extra earnings for the teachers on this year's salary and then reverse it out next year. It's just it's a timing thing, but that's about $1.2 million. So when we change the calendar around, nobody's getting paid any extra. There's no more money being paid. It's just a timing to bring it back into the current year that they are actually working in. And then, of course, the TIA payouts, those have been paid out in June already. And that's another one of those timing things. We will not receive the TIA funds that we've already paid out. We won't get those from TEA until we do settle up, which is when the final rendition that they do, they push out everything, but it's actually after our year end. So, these things are it's a timing issue. The auditors require us to report them in the year that they happen and not necessarily in the year that it's paid and received. Other things that are just to align the budget with the expected expenditures, and then there was storm damage and some ESSER reimbursements, sanitizing, so that's about $4.7 million. Estimated net change to fund balance at the year end was about $1.7 million negative. So I don't feel at this time we're going to get back to the zero that we always strive for. I would mention the payroll accrual that I mentioned, that's about $1.2 million. So if not for that, we would get close, but we'll continue to strive to keep that.
So if it weren't for that, Kevin, we'd be close.
We'd be close, yeah.
Okay.
And that's just a paper entry that, because they're working 3 more days in this calendar year, or this fiscal year as opposed to last year.
Right.
So that would be close, but I'll have more on that. We'll bring a budget amendment for the final at the night meeting. And then the items that influence for next year's budget that we keep an eye on, student enrollment, we're projected at zero change. And then, of course, attendance, as we talked about a little bit before. I could mention I support fully, school leaderships and their program to get the kids into school. The actual number is probably, Mr. Gonzalez, about for each day is about a little over $35 a day. And with our 16,000 enrollment, A 1% decrease in attendance is just under $1 million. Just basic allotment. There's other things that go in, the other funding in that, weighted allotments in that, depending on what they are. But increase in property values is approximately 20% is what they've gone up. Now, the legislature's just passed or is in the process, I don't know if they've actually passed it yet, some property relief. Those bills both hold harmless agreements for school districts, so that the additional homestead exemptions and that they're proposing should not affect our revenue in that regard. So we'll see how they actually, get it out of legislature and if the governor passes it.
How long are the hold harmless? Like,
I mean, essentially
forever?
for as long as that's in place is generally what they do.
Yeah,
But
I'm still trying to
haven't seen-
understand what that legislation looks like for us. It's really complicated.
Yeah, it is complicated, and we were disappointed. There was, originally in those bills, there was the payments for teachers, $2,000 to $6,000, depending on where you ranked in rural or urban. And those eventually got taken out before it got to where it is now. So that's not in play anymore. We've used an inflation estimate of a 5% increase across the board on everything that's non-payroll categories. And then we have the new instructional facility allotment, or NIFA as it's called, which allows funding of $1,000 per ADA for new instructional facilities. So Sadbury Intermediate will apply for that, and we've already submitted that application. It is an amount that's allocated by the state, and every district that puts an application in, if it goes over the allotment that the state set aside, then it will be prorated. So we had them before for, I believe, Ross and SFA, and those did get prorated because the amount was not sufficient to cover all of the applications, but it is something. Just the estimated 23-24 revenue and expenditures as they look now with no change in ADA, 20% property value growth. The state revenue part of our funding would be about $47.5 million, and the property taxes would be around $106 million. For a total of $153,500,000, and then federal and other local and state about $12 million. So our total revenue estimated about $166 million, and total expenditures $168 million. So our estimating right now, as it looks today, would be a shortfall of about 1.8, almost 1.9 million, and that would be before raises. So we still we'll come back and talk about that. We still don't have much from the legislature on what our funding, would look like. They were going on previous years because they've not really tackled that yet. And the one thing that we do have that we've already approved, the board is approved, and we thank you for that. With ESSER funds that we had available that we know are there, we've already approved the 2% stipends for September and December of 23 and a 1% in 20 of 24, and that's similar to what we did this year. Sign-on bonus for new teachers, and again, ESSER funded, $1,000 if they start the first semester and $500 in the second semester. And then this year we added an additional longevity stipend for classroom teachers. And this is differentiated by length of service. 5 to 9 years would be $250, 10 to 14, $500, and so on for every 5 years. I think up to a maximum of $1,500, and that would be paid in February. And those are all things that were funded with our ESSER funds that we already have available, and that we can say we can do that right now. One thing that we have not, and we've had the question of, does this mean no raises? We're doing stipends. Does that mean we're not getting raises? And we really are up in the air about that. Many districts are not tackling that at all right now, waiting on to see if the legislature will do something. We have run some numbers, preliminary numbers, to talk about perhaps doing a 2% raise across the board to be able to do something, but we are hesitant to do that because of where the legislature stands right now. And several things that go into that. They have in the past passed legislation and then said, this is what you will pay out, and that's on top of whatever you've done at that point. Then that's only funded for 1 year. So you get caught in that if you're in that trap, and just the uncertainty of where they're going. So we're still sitting tight, waiting on to see where they will eventually end up, and what they'll do. But now we're hearing they may not talk about that till October. So
The people listening, and we're talking about the legislature talking about it and thinking about it, and then you mentioned October. So for teachers listening, and those that have questions about this specific thing, when are we talking about? When would we know what the legislature is gonna, is it October? Is it, when would our decision, when are we going to hear about this again and gonna be making some decisions?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, we would expect, or normally expect the legislature to make their decisions, have our funding in place and all that when they end the session in May. So they've, pushed that can, kicked the can down the road, so to speak. And they're, continuing to drag their feet on that. Now, there's a lot of talk out there. I'm not going to even go into some of the things that are being said because.
So Kevin, has the governor, so the governor is the one who sets the topics for special sessions.
Correct.
Has he assigned school funding to a special session yet?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that I'm aware of either.
No.
So, I think it boils down to, we need to ask our governor, when is he going to make this a topic for a special session?
If the special session happens and it's, we're looking at it being over by October, the end of October, when teachers ask, are we gonna get it and when might we know, I really don't want to say I don't know. I want to say we're looking at what?
Well, before you answer that, I want to thank the board again. Sadly, we anticipated that this would be pushed back further and further in special sessions, and that's why we went after this very aggressive approach for basically 5% of their salary in stipends throughout next year. So many districts right now who unfortunately didn't have the ESSER funding available, they've not given anything. And some are taking the approach of just going into the deficit budget to give a 1% or 2% raise. So we've done the numbers, if you want to share that, at minimum of looking at a 2% raise on top of the 5% we're giving them. So again, this 5% is monumental compared to many districts right now that simply didn't have a funding source. The bad news with what we're doing with retention is it's ESSER funded, and we will have that fiscal cliff when all of this money disappears. So we are imploring the legislators to do something, to dedicate a funding source dedicated to compensation so that we could do something on top of this. But if you want to share what we've talked about at looking at a 2% raise, and if we decide to do it now or wait until what happens in October, everything that I've read, and I've talked to countless superintendents, we're literally left holding the bag because the governor's not put it in a session. And even though, Kevin mentioned it a while ago with the property tax and all that they just did with that, there was something attached in there that would have been a $6,000 salary adjustment for all of our teachers because we fell into that category, but they pulled it out before it went to the governor's desk for approval. So we're back to ground zero.
Right. Well, and actually I don't know that was a salary increase. I believe it was a one-time payment.
At one time,
But it was for, I believe, 2 years. It changed as they went through it, and then they just eventually took it out, which, was very discouraging because that would have been, an extra benefit for our teachers in that. But where we would be sitting if we went ahead, each 1% raise basically across the board, just to make it as simple as I can, is about 1.2 to 1.3 million. So if we did a 2%, we're looking at about another 2.5 million onto the budget where it is now. So, you've got, it's about 1.9, so you're talking another 2.5. You're getting back close to where we did last year at the 4 to 4.5 million deficit budget in that range. So that's something we can do. I mean, we did it last year. but, you know, we just don't, there's a lot of uncertainty as to what they will do, and they may not do anything. I mean, it's really discouraging because the governor's really, you know, holding this hostage to not pass any bill, he's saying, that doesn't have his education savings account or vouchers in it. So, you know, I don't know if the you know, the other side of the legislature, if the House will cave on that and agree to that or not. I mean, or if someone will give. I mean, it's like a game of chicken right now. I mean, who's going to blink first? That's my best analogy. I mean, you know, I'm not sure, you know, when they will decide or if they'll decide. But we have the option. We could go and we'll continue to talk and look at that. We could go and push that out there and, you know, pass a deficit budget.
And the
with
difference between the raise we're talking about versus the stipends that we've already approved is that the stipends are one-time dollars. The raises are recurring, so it locks us into a larger commitment moving forward.
Correct. Yes, they basically are forever, and the stipends are just the 1 year. So, but we do have those funds available, which, you know, we're thankful for that. As Ms. Carabine said, there's districts that didn't have that, and they're, you know, really struggling trying to decide, you know, what to do, and almost feeling like they have to jump out to give some kind of raise because they don't have the ESSER stipend to help them through next year, and wait for the legislature is basically what we're doing.
But I can remember first being on the board, and when I realized that the state legislatures set the budget for districts as we're starting school. So imagine trying to budget not knowing what is your budget. And I feel like it's getting worse, not better, when we don't finish the things that should have been done in May. So it's always up in the air a bit, but this is.
And teachers sign their contract having no clue what they're going to be making.
Well, they'll be making at least what they made before, right? Unless,
Plus the 5%.
Yeah.
Again,
plus the 5%.
The 5% is monumental compared to many districts. And when you look at deficit budgets now all across the state, it's profound. So the fact that we got ours down from 4 million to, you know, a little more than 1 million, we commend Kevin for doing that. But for a point of reference, too, you recall what Cy-Fair just adopted?
Yeah, that's what I was going to, that's always my go-to, and I believe it's Dr. Henry, is it Mark Henry? Was their superintendent, 30 years, I think. He resigned this year and basically said this was the most difficult budget year he'd ever had, and he just didn't feel like he wanted to do it, and he took some shots at the legislature and the governor on his way out. He said, I guess I'm not working here anymore, so they can't really do anything to me. But the budget they passed was about $139 million deficit budget.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, it's all relative because their budget's over $1 billion, right, to start with. But I think last year they passed $109 million negative, and they were able to make up most of that with their ESSER funding. But, you know, that runs out. So, I mean, and they did go ahead and do some raises, but they weren't going to be able to cover that with ESSER this year.
People need to remember every time, just for reference, every time we mention ESSER funding, we're talking about money given for COVID.
Correct.
Money given because of COVID.
Yep, to close
and it's ending.
Right.
Yes, just for reference.
Yep,
yes.
That's true.
I had to look that up. Esther, what do they talk about? Esther.
Educational, what is this?
I think it's every, I knew it off the, you know, it's been.
Whoop, there we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ibarra.
Yes, thank you.
Yep, I could roll that one off 2 years ago, but it's, you know, I don't remember exactly.
So we can continue to study it and contemplate the 1% or the 2%, and then you'll be back next month, correct?
Correct. Yep.
When you're talking about 1 or 2, you're talking about possibility of a raise, not just stipend. Yeah, I agree with that. I mentioned that, and I'm the only one here from the Finance Committee meeting, but I don't have exactly a reputation of being loose with money, but I think this is a time when we have to be, I would say, bold and maybe, take chances, because we owe it. I think our teachers do everything we possibly can, and not just teachers, but the other staff. And I don't have any illusions that we're for sure going to get money from the state, but, more money, but I think that they know, at least a lot of them know, that it'll be a huge disservice if they don't. So I guess, but you were right also, Kevin. They may say, well, you gave them that. Well, now what we're giving you, you got to stack that on top, and so nanny. But but I don't expect that. But I mean, let's just put it this way: if we work in a framework of fear, then we're not going to do anything. So I just want us to get past that.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, that's the one reason I put the slide up there to start with, that we are at the top of our range for our fund balance. So, we are operating in a pretty strong position. We could do that.
That's one of the reasons I feel that we can do it.
And then we have the ESSER funding that we can still, for indirect costs, that'll come back next year as well. So that gets us through, and it buys us enough time to make some adjustments if we need to, and the legislature doesn't do anything. Only other item on there, I've got just the prior tax rates, just basically showing the decrease in the property tax rates, which, because of the value increase, people's property taxes are still not going to go down. But it's just to show, how the state is compressing the rate to help maintain that lower tax bite, I guess, but so to speak. And then,
Kevin, it's important. I need us to say it publicly. Does the school district have anything to do with setting property tax values?
No. The appraisal district does that, and they're
no.
separate entities.
So the school district doesn't have anything to do with setting property values. We set a tax rate based on the part that will come to the district.
Right, and actually TEA now sets that. We
TEA
just
sets
submit
that.
our property values to them we'll
Right.
get them on the 25th, send them to TEA, they'll send us our rate. So
We're on the receiving end of others making these decisions.
Right.
The school district does not
Right.
make any of the decisions.
correct. The only part that we control of that is the INS rate.
I was going to
the debt
say, we
service.
do set a rate.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's dictated by, we can only collect as much with that as we're going to pay on the bond indebtedness that the voters have approved in past years.
Sure. So I just want to publicly say that, school districts get the rap that we get about taxes, but we have no control over the way the system is set up. It's a very complex system that, we're all just in it trying to figure it out. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I think
Any other
that's it for tonight.
So we
will be
look
back.
forward to budget
Yeah.
season and hearing more.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Visal.
you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. And apologies, we have a really full agenda today because this is our only meeting in July. I think it's why it's so long. So thanks for bearing with us while we're still on information items. And we want to turn it over to our Director of Career and Technical Education, David Reynolds, to give us an update on career and technical education updates and overview.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm gonna be brief. I'm jealous. Janice got to give her whole overview of last year, and so CTE, we had so much success last year. When I sent my presentation, they said it's way too long. We ain't got time to go over all that tonight. So I'm gonna be brief. I think what they wanted me to mainly talk
But
about.
Mr. Reynolds, I do want to let everyone know, he'll come back on another night when we have more time to do a lot of what Janice did tonight, because he's got some serious bragging rights for CTE. Tonight, we need you to consider approval on the MOUs for our partnerships, so David's got a little bit of information on that.
Shame on you for being so successful.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Yeah. So let me remind you, out at CTEC, we also allow students from outside school districts to come out there and take part of the 4 programs that we have at CTEC. And for the past 4 years, we have serviced Caldwell ISD, Snook ISD, and College Station ISD. Actually, College Station didn't come till the second year we were open. But they come out there for the very first period. We start out there at 8 o'clock. We start before our Bryan ISD schools do. And those students have to get to school early to get on the bus to come out there, okay, to CTEC. And we've been doing that for the past 4 years, been very successful. Our attendance keeps increasing. Matter of fact, next year, we'll have the highest attendance we've ever had at CTEC. Although, I want to let you know that Caldwell is not going to participate. And for the last 2 years, they've been kind of weaning off and getting less students. They opened their own automotive program basically there. They partnered with a local industry, and they're sending their kids over there for auto. And so mainly they were coming out there for auto and construction. So the numbers kept getting less and less from Caldwell, and they feel that they're not going to participate anymore. Even with that, like I said, we'll have the highest attendance out there at CTEC. And I'm kind of glad, well, I don't want to say that publicly, I'm not glad. Even though they're not participating, our numbers from our Bryan ISD students keep increasing every year out there. And so it really made room for some more of our Bryan ISD students. We're getting more and more of them coming out. This year we'll have over 100 Bryan ISD students participating out there, which basically CTEC is serving its main purpose, is that those were 100 kids that previously we would have had to turn away. So we're very, very happy to be able to do that. So the MOUs are coming to you, I think, tonight. I think it's on the agenda. And so we just want to kind of give you information on that and let you know that Caldwell is not in there anymore. So any questions?
Didn't Caldwell open their own, didn't I see some?
Automotive.
Yeah,
Automotive.
so,
Yes.
but was it just automotive that they opened?
I'm not sure, but I heard David say automotive.
I think they're on
They've
their
done
way
culinary over there, so they're really trying to up their CP.
Right,
They've
they're
done
building
culinary. They always had a health
So it's a good
science.
thing. I mean,
Yeah.
they looked at ours and thought it was
Absolutely.
great.
I
and
think
so
it's a
they
good
built one
move
of
for
their own.
Caldwell. I hope
Yeah.
it serves their interest and needs. So.
They were very good partners, and we're happy for them that they're able to grow their program.
Absolutely.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. All right. Items for discussion or action, consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
I move approval for all items listed on the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Ms. Binford, seconded by Mr. Gonzalez. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Consent agenda is approved. We will next move into our regular agenda. First up is business services. We'll be hearing from our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, Kevin Besaw, to talk about discuss and consider approval of school unit interlocal agreement between Bryan ISD and the City of Bryan pertaining to the provisions of school resource officers.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. This is the annual renewal of our interlocal agreement with the City of Bryan to share officers from Bryan PD for our school resource officers. Essentially, this contract is identical to the prior year, with the exception of adding one SRO to the number. So we would go from 9 to 10 total SROs plus the sergeant that's over that unit. That is the increase that you can see or that I've laid out there. We went from 902,000 prior year to $1,018,000, which is basically about 85,000 an increased salary for the one officer. There's about 27,000 for increase in their benefits. And I would say that over the years, when going back to 17, 18, we split the agreement 50-50, and the city came to us and asked if they said they felt like it was more of a 75-25 split because the 9 months that the officers were working in the school district, and then the 3 months that they were available for them. So through the years, they've increased it. We've asked them to delay that a couple of times, so they wanted to do it in a couple of years, and it actually took about 4 years to get to that number. But that is where we are at now, so that's a 75% split on the officers' salary benefits, and then some vehicle operating costs in that number.
Any questions? If not, do we hear a motion?
I'll move approval of the resolution authorizing the district to enter into an interlocal cooperation agreement with the city of Bryan pertaining to the provision of school resource officers.
Is there a second? It's been moved by Mr. Stasny, seconded by Mr. Gonzalez. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say no. Ayes have it. Motion's approved. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Beasley.
you.
Next, we'll move into school leadership. Again, this, let's see, who are we hearing from? Did David leave? It looks like David left.
Dr. Merrill, did you want to come up and do this on CTE's behalf?
He did his spiel, so.
Sorry to
So
make
we're
you-
going to welcome Dr. Merrill up who is not the Director of Career and Technical Education, who is one of our executive, what is it?
What does he do?
Executive Director of School Leadership.
Executive Director of School Leadership.
He does
Where's
super,
Trey?
yeah.
Can we get Trey Gonzalez to come to the board meeting, please? Is that,
He
are we able
does
to suspend
supervise,
the board
he
meeting?
does supervise David Reynolds
Yeah.
and CTE.
All right.
So we're here to, it looks like, approve two different memorandums of understanding. One is between Bryan ISD and Snook, and the other is between Bryan ISD and College Station, which we've just heard some
Right.
things about. So any questions for Dr. Merrill about
you.
these two items? Okay, if not, then do we hear a motion for the first one about the memorandum of understanding between Bryan ISD and Snook ISD?
Dr. Harlan, I'm sorry, it's called Dr. Merrill. Dr. Harlan, I move approval of a memorandum of understanding between Bryan ISD and Snook ISD for student enrollment at the Career and Technical Education Complex, CTEC, as presented.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Mr. Gonzalez, seconded by Ms. Benford. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion is approved.
If we could, Dr. Barr, if you'd mark that down at how little it took me to actually get that approved.
Hey, we got one more.
We got one more.
We got one more. Just stand there.
I tell you, he's,
Early.
all I
That's
see-
not good.
I only see the back of his head. That's all, that's all.
Okay, the next one is for the memorandum of understanding between Bryan ISD and College Station ISD.
I move approval of the memorandum of understanding between Bryan ISD, College Station ISD for student enrollment at the Career and Technical Education Complex, CTE, as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Benford, seconded by Mr. Gonzalez. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Ayes have it. Motion's approved. Thank you.
Great job, Dr. Merrill. Thank you.
All right. Next, we are moving
He's
to
tired.
teaching and learning. We're going to hear from Jennifer Warren, Executive Director of Special Programs, as we consider approval of purchase over $50,000 for special education contracted services.
Good evening. Is that how it works? If I just disappear, somebody else will do it for me?
Let's let him come do it.
Okay. Back in the June board meeting, Teaching and Learning brought forward several vendors to be approved that were over $50,000. And several of those purchases pertain to partnerships for special education services. And we want to say, first of all, thank you so much for approving that for us. What we have found is that currently we have four LSSPs, which stands for Licensed Specialist in School Psychology. We have 4 vacancies there, and we have 1 DIAG vacancy. Those were to be covered in part by those contracted services that you approved in June. However, while these partnerships were approved, those companies, along with the district and the rest of the state and nation, are also experiencing vacancies. And so those staff members that they had kind of earmarked for Bryan ISD are no longer available. They're no longer with their company. And so they're no longer able to fulfill that commitment for us. So what we're asking from the board tonight is to consider approval of an additional contracted service, which is National Recruiting Consultants, and they have 2 staff members by name. We have their names that they are willing to dedicate to us to fill those positions that were no longer available through those vendors that we approved in June. So the request tonight is for approval of national recruiting consultants in the amount of $225,000, and that would be for one DIAG and one LSSP, which is the licensed specialist in school psychology.
And so we're doing contracts and services not to exceed that, right?
Not
Yes.
to exceed.
And you said you've had a chance to look over their resumes, and I'm sure we're not blindly, I realize we're probably getting desperate, but we don't want to be that desperate. So
Correct.
you have had a
Vetting
chance to
them.
review their
Yes, in
their
fact,
credentials.
that's a great question. We have, in my past, I've had experience where a vendor has sent a contracted staff member to us and red flags, and we start to ask those questions. So I have learned, and the special education team has learned to really vet those candidates just as you would for a new hire for the district.
Great, thank you.
Dr. Merrill, are you okay with this?
Excellent. Okay, Dr. Harlan, I recommend approval of the purchase of special education contracted services not to exceed $225,000 as presented.
Second.
All right, thank you. It's been moved by Mr. Gonzalez, seconded by Ms. Waller. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next, we'll move to local governance, and we're going to hear from Kevin again, who needs no introduction at this point. And it looks like he is joined by his partner in crime,
See, he has to have backup. Merrill just came up and just handled it.
Miss Carol Kuhn, our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. So this one is to consider approval of revisions to Board Policy DEAB Local.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing us to come up and present this policy recommendation for a change. I think we're waiting for a slide to come up as well. But we're going to be talking to you tonight about policy DEAB Local, and that's the policy that deals with compensation, wage and hourly laws. And I can kind of keep going a little bit. So anyway, in our classification of employees, we have two types of employees. We have the exempt employees and the non-exempt employees. And when we're talking about work. And so in our exempt employees, those are our professional people. Those are the people that we pay salary. Most of us in here tonight, all of us probably in here tonight are salaried people. So those are our professional people. But then we have our non-exempt employees, and within that pay group or classification, there are two different classifications of people in that are non-exempt. And we have the paraprofessionals and the instructional aides in that group, and those people are hourly and they earn compensatory time, comp time, when they work beyond the 40-hour work week. And then in the other group in that classification,
It's an attachment on our agenda. Yes.
And then on the other group in that in the category of non-exempt worker, and those are our auxiliary workers. And those people are paid straight time and time and a half. So you have exempt and then the two groups of non-exempt workers. And so the purpose for us to come here tonight is to talk to you about the group, the non-exempt workers that are the paraprofessionals and the instructional aides. Those people, because a lot of times they have a tendency that their days become very long because they're projects and things that can't be completed in a 8-hour workday, and so they end up working overtime. So we're looking at trying to find a way to manage work-life balance for those people and to have reasonable work expectations for those people. And so we also have a fiscal responsibility as well, as far as trying to manage how it impacts our budget as well. And so that's our purpose for standing here tonight. And so, keep going. And so in our current policy, our employees that are hourly wage employees that are earning comp time, right now, we allow them to accrue comp time leave to 80 hours. And once they exceed 80 hours.
We can look it up on ours, and y'all can go from here if you'd like.
Well, I'm still talking.
Okay.
We've got a printout here, though.
Gotcha,
Thank you.
okay, just making sure.
So once they exceed 80 hours, we pay them at their time and a half rate down to 40 hours, and they still maintain 40 hours in their leave bank. Okay? So that's a very large number. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of management trying to keep things balanced. And so we'd like to make a change to that current policy. Here we go.
There we go.
So that Yep, there we go.
It's so pretty, too.
It is, isn't it a nice presentation, Julie? I agree.
Yeah.
So
You did such a good job without it, Carol.
So then what we'd like to do is make a change to our current policy and make it to where these employees can accrue comp time up to 40 hours, and then they can keep it, and we would pay them down to 24 hours. So it becomes a more manageable time. 24 hours is 3 days of flex time. And the reason why, and Kevin, you may want to help me, I've done a lot of talking, the reason why they have the buffer, the comp time, is so that these employees, if they had to go to the doctor, take something to their child at school, instead of them having to make or get time docked, they would just slide in some comp time to make them whole again for that work week. And so it's just a nice little incentive we have for our employees, but we also felt like it was getting too large and we were working our people too much. And so we needed to figure out what we could do to help them.
And another reason for the reason they're using comp time instead of paying the overtime is the school district business runs in time frames where there are certain times that things are very busy, like the beginning of school. So the campus secretaries or the pairs on there, or, certain other times at Christmas, the party. There's times when they're very busy and there's extra hours. And so to allow them to accumulate those hours and then, take them off at a different time when it may be slower is kind of the design of what compensatory time was meant for.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that they can use their compensatory time for is the January TE day. So our instructional aides, our clerical workers, if they have 8 hours accrued in their bank, they will use that for that TE day, January 2nd, January 3rd, whatever day it is on this year's calendar. And they won't have to report to work. Otherwise, they have to report to work, and then we try to find things for them to do, because most of us are not at work that day. And then going back to the policy, we're asking for another consideration as well, and that is that the employee shall use the compensatory time within the school year or the duty year in which they earn it. So at the end of that duty year, if there's any comp time left in their bank, we pay them out so that it washes clean, and then the next school year would start again. So those are the two changes that we're asking to do into policy. And then we are creating a comp time approval form so that when secretaries or special ed aides know that they're going to be asked to work long extra hours, or there's a project that's got to be done, like Kevin said, beginning of school. It's crazy to get everything done within an 8-hour day sometimes, and sometimes they stay late to get things done for their principals, that we track them with the form. And then with that form, we can also say, well, you don't have to do this by yourself. I know that Crystal, Bryan, and Linda are going to come help you do this. And so they
Sorry.
so they would, help this person get the job done. It may not take them 10 more hours, but maybe 2. And so we would be able to help and support our people as well. So
we don't have this comp time approval right now. It's just
it's
honor system.
verbally, it's not tracked, it's there, it's supposed to be approved, but we're trying to clean it up to where it is
more formal. You have I think it's a wonderful idea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
And there's always that. You're always going to have people that, they check in earlier than their clock starts, or they stay later. And so we have to manage that as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
When will this start? When will this start?
Well, we're going to kind of wade into this just because we have employees right now who have comp time in their bank that is beyond the 40 hours.
Right.
And I didn't say this, but when we pay people down or we pay their comp time, it comes out of the campus or the department's budget. It's not hitting something special in Kevin's office. It's already allocated to the campuses. And so they have to use their budget to pay, because they should be managing these people to begin with, right? And so instead of us just saying, oh, we're fixing to pay down a bunch of your employees to zero because we haven't started the new work year, we're going to let them till the end of October 31st for everybody to get the comp time balances down, and then what's over 40 at that point, we're going to pay down to 24.
But the new school year, Carol, so for the other staff that haven't accrued that kind of time, we're starting when the school starts for them?
Oh, whenever they start work, that if they're an hourly wage employee and they work beyond the 8-hour day, they start building it.
Right, but what Carol had mentioned is in years past, we let it roll over to the next year. So there are some people sitting out there, even though school hasn't started, they've got a bank of comp time.
Gotcha.
So we're gonna stop doing that
Right.
and make it, just have a a clean break at the end of the year, so that the principals don't have to keep up with managing all this time that's rolling over to subsequent years.
But I think this is in line with what I hope is happening, which is work-life balance. And that if people are consistently working over, that it's recognized by and addressed by their supervisor. And either are there efficiencies that need to happen, or are there changes to positions that might need to happen,
Exactly.
right? That could be the catalyst for conversation.
Absolutely.
Right, bring awareness of it sooner is the idea.
Well, I move approval of the recommended revisions for Bryan ISD policy DEAB local.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Mr. Stasny, seconded by Ms. Binford. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Motion approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The board will now convene in closed session to discuss the following items as allowed by Texas Government Code, Chapter 551.071, .074, .0821, and .089. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussion in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in the open meeting. It is now 8:11 p.m. Before we do that. But the next item on the agenda are in closed session, including the board's consideration of a level 4 parent complaint. Because this grievance appeal involves disclosing personally identifiable student information, it will be heard in closed meeting under the authority of Texas Government Code Section 551.0821. Further, this matter may be held in closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074 because it is a complaint against a district employee. Additionally, because this is a level 4 appeal, as required by board policy FNG local, an audio recording will be made of the hearing. When we begin the hearing, just a recommendation for all of us to please avoid talking when others are speaking so the tape will accurately reflect the proceedings. Also for the record, I would like to note that the following board members are present. We have Mr. David Stasny, Mr. Leo Gonzalez, Ms. Felicia Binford, Ms. Ruthie Waller. My name is Julie Harlan. I am president of the Board of Trustees. A quorum of the board is present to hear this appeal. So we will now move into closed session. right, the board reconvened in open session at 9:53 PM. No action was taken in closed session. Do I have a motion regarding the appeal?
Dr. Harlan, I move that the board affirm the decision of the administration in the Level 2 hearing and continue the actions implemented in the Level 1 grievance hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. The motion is approved. And that concludes our meeting today. We are now adjourned.
Thank you.